This is a preview of our in-depth episode on the life and work of David Bowie. For early access to this episode, plus a lot of other great Art of Darkness content, subscribe at patreon.com/artofdarkpod or substack.com/@artofdarkpod. Enjoy.
But saintly as John's work in his latter years might have been, and true to his son's propensity for ringing the changes in the most dramatic way possible, he had also lived out a wild, anarchic side in his youth. After inheriting a substantial sum of money when he was only 17 years old, he had bought a theater club and then a nightclub on Charlotte Street, London, which was patronized by boxers, wrestlers, and gangsters. Both failed dismally. So his father had this kind of entertainment side, the sort of seedy London nightlife side. Before Peggy came into his life, John had married a cabaret performer known as Hilda, the Viennese nightingale. Ah, wunderbar, Hilda. But he was unfaithful to her with a nurse who gave birth to his daughter Annette, whom Hilda, clearly a remarkable woman, agreed to bring up as her own. In fact, when her marriage to John was spiraling downward, Hilda persuaded him to buy a house that Annette could one day inherit. The house was 40 Stansfield Road, and when David was born, Annette would help care for him. However, in 1956, Annette met and married an Egyptian engineer and moved to Cairo with him, became a Muslim, and coincidentally changed her name to Iman, which would be, that was Bowie's second wife, Iman. The Somalian supermodel. We'll cover all that later. She last saw David when he was 15 years old, and she'd flown back to London for a visit. When David walked into the room, it all came flooding back. I threw open my arms to hug him, but he just flinched. I was hurt because I suddenly realized he cut me off in his mind the moment I walked out the front door when he was 9, Annette said.
Wow.
So one thing about Bowie's household too, and I think this is Angie who said this, and Angie is a trip. Angie, Bowie's first wife, Angie, a trip. Ziggy Stardust did not come from Bowie's mind alone. I can't remember what record it's on. It might be, I think it's Ziggy, where he talks about 5 years, that's all we've got, and it's sort of this apocalyptic anthem. And there's a line where he says, "I never knew I'd need so many people," something like that. I'm gonna make sure I get that right. Bowie 5 years lyrics, but that's one thing that I've been struck with, that I never thought I'd need so many people. And that is like such an interesting, it's one of the reasons why I think this oral biography is so great, because you realize like David Bowie was a group of people. Like it was an individual man, but he didn't exist in the vacuum of space, shall we say?
Yeah.
Right. We're still talking about him, man. I've had David Bowie visit me in my dreams, dude.
Yeah.
Like I have had, that dude. I really believe you could make, like, that guy was an actual wizard, like an actual real practicing wizard. And he would repeatedly say in interviews that he's not a musician. I'm not a musician. He would even say, I don't even play the instruments. Like for him, music was just the vehicle for his creativity, and right. that might come off as like false modesty, but he means it. What he really meant was he's not like playing a Stradivarius up there, actually playing like musically like a real musician might, who's devoted to an instrument, and who he even would say in an interview that he hated singing.
Really?
He wished he could find somebody who could sing all of his songs for him, but he just,
interesting,
I mean, and there was there's a moment where he takes over with the Ziggy stuff, and it was one of the great musical theater people of the period, whose name escapes me. You would know it right away, but it was one of the guys who was a serious musical theater rock musical composer. What was his name? I think it was Andrew Lloyd Webber, maybe.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Heard it and said, "What is this? He can't sing. I can't follow this. What is this guy doing?" And when you listen to David Bowie, there is a quality where you're like, is he? Like,
I've always come away with it not thinking, yeah, I mean, don't hate me, David Bowie fans, but I never thought of him as a good singer in terms of somebody who has an incredible voice.
No, that's not the point. He lives somewhere between Bob Dylan and the rest of us. right? Like I think
hmm
he's a better singer than I am,
Oh,
right?
for
But
sure.
like,
Yeah. Yeah. And me
yeah,
too. Yeah.
yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
and he was aware of that. The fact
Yeah.
that he even said, "I don't like it," it's like crazy. What are you, David Bowie? Like, come on. But there are moments when you listen to his music where you go, "Oh yeah, he's forcing this. There's
Mm,
effort here. It's not effortless." And he doesn't try to hide the fact that there's effort. Like you listen to Heroes, which I now
mhm,
believe is the greatest rock and roll song of all time.
mm, mhm.
One of let's say that top
Sure.
three,
Yeah.
top five.
Why not?
Um, there's a moment where he's like he turns it on, and you just go, wow, this is like it's not natural. He's not
Mm,
like some
mhm,
bird. There's effort somehow. In any case,
Interesting.
um,
Okay. Okay.
yeah, yeah. Okay, a little more about his parents. After a chance meeting with Peggy Burns in her hometown of Tunbridge Wells, where she was working as a waitress at the Ritz Movie Theater Cafe, John Haywood Jones fell in love with her. Both strong individuals, they had David in 1947 when were in their mid 30s, and by the time he was 8 months old, they decided to marry, thus legitimizing him. Yeah, that helps.
Mhm,
They remained
mhm,
married until John's death, and different as he, a placid and contemplative man, was from Peggy, who managed the unique feat of being alternately tempestuous and cold. He stayed the course with her. From his father, David got his love of reading. Even in his darkest drug days, he traveled with the world with trunks containing his vast library of books. One of us, one of us. He got his first taste of Hemingway from his father's Readers Book Club, which sent him a book a month, each of which David eagerly devoured. My father opened up my world because he taught me the habit of reading. I got so much information, so many of the things I wanted to do came from books. Another less salutary habit that David picked up from his father was chain smoking. And despite
mhm,
undergoing hypnosis and aversion therapy to break the habit, for a great part of his life, he was unable to quit. John's favorite brand of cigarettes was Players, which he chain smoked, and David followed suit, making Players his own cigarette of choice. In later years, though, he switched to Marlboros, making sure that Coco, we're going to talk about later, but that's like his PA. He left her $2 million at the end of this.
Nice.
Yeah, when so
Nice.
yeah, always carried a secret stash in her handbag just in case he ran out.
Now that's an assistant.
Listen.